On this episode of Locked On Angels, Scary Perry awakens on Halloween and makes a trade. Griffin Canning is going to the Braves, and Jorge Soler is coming to the Angels. So, is this a good move? What does it do for the Halos? We're going to get into all of that and answer all the important questions. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM. All you got to do is search Locked On Angels. If you want to give back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, there's a couple things that you can do to help us out. You can leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hello, nice to see you. Hit that like button, hit that thumbs up button, that subscribe button, all the buttons on the page, on your phone, on your app. If you're not subscribed already, we'd love for you to subscribe to our channel. We're almost to 8,000, and we want 8,000 Locked On Everydayers before the end of the year. Whether you're watching or listening, come on over to YouTube, get in the comment section. It's the best way to get in touch with us and interact with us there. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You normally have the Super Halo Bros here. My name is John, and my brother Mike is usually with me, but he's busy. He's got a life. He's got things to do. No, he'll be back on Monday with us, but I am happy to be here with you. It's our third off season here at Locked On Angels, and we're here 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, every single weekday until late December. We'll drop down to about 3 days a week, and then we will come back in February before spring training at full strength, full speed ahead. On today's show, the Angels acquire Jorge Soler for Griffin Canning. What a surprise. What does this mean for the Halos rotation? What did Perry Minasian have to say about the move? We're going to get into all of that first. Let's get into why this move makes sense and try to answer all the questions that I've been seeing out there on social media. First, let me give you Jorge Soler's numbers. He's going to be 33 in 2025 to start the season. This year, across the Giants and the Braves, he hit 241, a 338 on base, 442 slugging, and a 780 OPS. He had a 121 OPS plus. That means he was 21% better than league average. I'm going to bring that up a few times, so just keep that in mind. 121 OPS plus, 21 home runs, 64 RBI, 84 runs scored. Like I mentioned, started with the Giants this past year, got traded to the Braves at the deadline. They were like, you know what? We need some Soler power in our lives. So they brought him over. He struggled to start the season with the Giants, and he only DH'd. And while he was with San Francisco, he had a 419 slugging percentage. Still good. Still, respectable. And a 749 on base plus slugging in San Francisco. Then when he got traded to the Braves, the rest of the time he played the outfield. He played the outfield for them. Remember, Acuna went down. They had Marcell Ozuna playing DH. Then in Atlanta, he hits a 493 slugging percentage with an 849 OPS with the Braves. This year and in 2026, he will be owed $13 million across the next two seasons. That also plays into the Angels' luxury tax threshold. So it's an even $13 million, an even trade across the board. Now, did a little research. $13 million is going to be the market value for a bat like Jorge Soler. So even if the Angels were to sign somebody around his level of play, it would have cost them the same. So very interesting they were able to get him for Griffin Canning. Biggest thing I've been seeing, should we be worried about Jorge Soler? He's older, 33, kind of a DH only type. Well, hopefully I can give you some answers to that. I'm not going to tell you how to feel. I'm just going to give you the information, all right? So here's the thing about getting older. There are very clear and obvious indicators that someone's age is affecting their hitting, their play on the field, that sort of thing. First, you want to look at is average exit velocity. Are they launching the ball as hard as they have over the course of their career. Well, Soler's career average, 91.2 miles per hour. In 2024, it was 90.5 miles per hour. That's actually lower than the last 4 years, 2019 to 2023, but it is higher than it was in 2016 through 2018. Second is his hard hit percentage. So how often he hits the ball at a certain mile per hour or above. His career average, 45.3%. In 2024, it was 44.1%. So right in line with his career average. His walk rate and K rate have not changed either. And both over this past year were the best of his career. 20-ish strikeout rate. Not great, but he does have like an 11% walk rate. So he will take his walks, and that's something you want to see. You want to keep that line moving with Jorge Soler. His plate discipline is another factor that hasn't changed either, and that's a good thing. Swinging at pitches in the zone, the percent of time he does that, his career average is 67.1%. In 2024, 64.8%. So he's still making good decisions swinging at pitches in the zone. So that's not a concern that I have. The chase rate, how often he chases pitches out of the zone, career average 25.4, and this past year was 26.8, about 1.5% higher than it was over his career. Then the whiff percentage, how often does he swing and miss? 44.4% in his career, 44.5% in 2024. That hasn't changed either. So Soler is the same guy he's been through a lot of his career, and that's a good thing because it means that age, body, all that stuff hasn't affected him yet. There's not any clear signs of regression. Now, speed-wise, he's been about 26 to 27 miles per hour in sprint speed the last few years, so he's not fast, but he's also not declining either. He's not getting slower with each year. What about clutch hitting? This concerns me a little bit because it reminds me of when we got Hunter Renfroe. We were all excited for his power, but then he never hit with runners in scoring position and men on base. So here are the numbers. I'm going to try to, I'm going to be truthful, but I'm also going to point to something that I think is a good sign. So in 2024, with runners in scoring position, he had a 255 average, not bad, 455 slugging, and an 803 OPS. With men on base, not quite as good, 237 average, a 405 slugging, and a 725 OPS. So he's pretty all or nothing when there's runners on base. At the very least, that OPS tells me that when he gets a hit, it's a powerful hit. It's a double, a triple, or a home run. Probably not a triple, right? But it's at least an extra base hit, and he'll take a walk and keep the line moving for you. So that's a good thing. But you have to prepare yourself. He is going to strike out in those key moments. But here's my thing. Why did the Angels make this move? I think it's purely for power. The Angels slugging percentage, meaning the percentage of times they get extra base hits, double, triple, home run, they were ranked third to last in the league, only above the Rays and the White Sox. And it was the hitting that really tailed off at the end of the season for the Angels. Back in April and March and April, they had a collective team slugging percentage of 385. That went up to 410 in May and 382 in June. So it was fairly consistent all the way down to 328 in July, 356 in August, and then 349 in September. So the Angels are missing that pop. And when Mike Trout is out and injured, and Taylor Ward's on a cold streak, and Joe Adell is figuring things out at the plate, you don't have a lot of slugging power to go around. I think they have plenty of guys that, make good contact, speed on the bases. Zach Neto, of course, Logan O'Hoppe can hit for some power. But at the end of the day, having a bat like this, I think is really important. I'll get into that in a second. We talk about an impact bat, somebody who strikes fear into the heart of the pitcher. Well, Angels slugging percentage being down, I think that Soler is going to help bring that back up. And we talk about this all the time. Let's take somebody like Taylor Ward, for example. When he is a threat in the lineup, when Taylor Ward is the threat in the lineup, the only threat, he's exposed. He is a much better piece, role player, unexpected power source. Oops, we gave up a home run to Taylor Ward, and it's a 3-run home run, right? That's when he's on and when he's much better. We've seen it in the past when he's healthy and he's surrounded by the likes of Mike Trout or previously Shohei Ohtani. Ward's not the threat in the lineup. Those guys are. And I think Soler is that kind of guy. And if you make a mistake to Soler, he's going to make you pay for it. And I think it hides guys like Taylor Ward so much better. We are going to discuss what this means for Taylor Ward later on in the show, but very quickly, I saw a lot of questions about what about Trout and the DH spot. The biggest question I've been seeing is, does this mean the DH spot is going to be clogged up, so to speak, by Jorge Soler? Well, here's the thing. Again, I mentioned he played every game in the outfield for the Braves once he was traded. And prior to that, he was a DH only in San Francisco. Is he good in the outfield? No, he's not, but he can do it. And he's a body and he can handle it, but he doesn't need to be a DH every single day, which is going to get Trout off of his feet. And Trout needs to DH as much as possible because of all the injuries. But the other factor is that Trout isn't going to forego the outfield completely. I think for some reason I saw a lot of people saying that, what happened to that notion? Well, I don't think Trout was ever going to give up the outfield 100%, but I do think he'll go to a corner outfield spot. I imagine it would be left field, but don't forget, if you're worried about the DH spot, the Angels ran out Willie Calhoun at DH, and I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, in 36% of all potential DH starts this season, and he only had a 97 OPS plus. That's 3% worse than league average. A guy who is 21% better than league average might not feel like much, but honestly, that's where the Angels go wrong all the time, is that they get guys who aren't even league average. We said it so many times, especially when Trout and Ohtani were playing together. It was, can we just get league average pitching? Can we just get league average hitting around these guys? That's all they need. They just need league average, and they would have success, but they haven't had that for a long time. So I am excited about Jorge Soler. He's the kind of bat, again, that's a threat in the lineup. And I think this is going to make a big impact in the lineup. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up on Locked On Angels, what does this Griffin Canning move to Atlanta mean for him, the Halos, and what did Perry Minasian say about this trade, the outfield, and then the plans for the rest of the offseason? We're going to get into all of that coming right up. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on all sports, including the NFL, and it's all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Again, you don't have to do it before the game. You can do it in the middle of the game. When you get that hunch, you gotta go for it. You gotta trust your gut is what they want you to do. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now, I saw a lot of questions about the Angels rotation, what this means, and what it looks like without Griffin Canning. So I wanted to address those for you as well. So let me start with Griffin Canning going to Atlanta. What's going to happen with the rotation? Well, let me give you a little background on Canning, just a refresher here. He's 28 years old, coming off a down year, posted a 5.19 ERA, 99 earned runs allowed, led the American League, 130 strikeouts, 66 walks, and 31 homers allowed in 171 and 2/3 innings. He did make all of his starts without missing any time from injuries. He's also nominated for that Gold Glove at starting pitcher, which he did win in 2020. But I want to talk about, what are the Braves going to do with Griffin Canning? Funny enough, a lot of people said, great, they're going to turn him into the next great pitcher and he's going to be a stud. And you know what? More power to the Braves if they can turn Griffin Canning into a stud. But here's the thing. They can keep him. They can probably try to fix him, but he is a free agent after this year. It would have been Canning's last year with the Angels. I don't think they would have extended him. I don't think that they would have offered him a contract. I'm not even sure if the Angels would have tendered him a contract this season, let alone the Braves could also non-tender Griffin Canning as well. Atlanta needed to make space in the lineup with Marcell Ozuna taking the DH spot full-time. Ronald Acuna Jr. is coming back. He's, of course, going to play the outfield. This also cleared up salary for the Braves in turning Soler over to the Angels. Plus, the Braves could flip Griffin Canning to another team. So remember last year, they took on David Fletcher and Max Stassi from the Angels. They got Evan White from the Mariners, but then they flipped him to the Angels shortly after. They flipped Stassi to the White Sox. So the Braves could very well do that very same thing with Griffin Canning. So they could fix him. They could just not give him a contract and walk away, and that saves them money. They got rid of Soler's money. They don't have to pay Griffin Canning, or they could flip him like they did last year. Where does this leave the rotation now? I saw a lot of concern about the Angels getting rid of a starter. Why are they getting rid of pitching? They need pitching. Da, 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 da. Well, again, remember how poorly they hit at the end of the season, and remember how great guys like Jack Kohanowitz were for the rotation at the end of last season. And I really do think that the Angels could benefit from having Soler's bat in the lineup, and it costs them Griffin Canning to do so. So again, he's a free agent after 2025. It was a cheap contract for the Braves versus the 2 years of Soler. So you get 2 years of a player for 1 year of Griffin Canning. And I also believe that next year there's 3 guys who are probably locks for the rotation, barring any trades, barring any moves. It's Tyler Anderson, Jose Soriano, and Jack Kohanowitz. You start there, right? You start your rotation with those 3 guys. Beyond those 3, you have Reed Detmers, you have Chase Silseth coming back from injury, you have Samuel Aldegari, who pitched very well for the Angels, you have George Clausen, who I think is going to compete for a rotation spot in spring training. And don't forget about Sam Bachman, who is healthy again. Patrick Sandoval, keep in mind that he's going to be out for the year with Tommy John surgery. I'm not sure what they're going to do with him, how they're going to go about that. But Perry Minasian was quoted as saying, we're definitely going to look at the free agent market from a rotation standpoint, and we're looking at the trade market from a rotation standpoint. That's definitely an area where we can improve. If that gives me hope, because there have been times in the past where the Angels don't seem to recognize the areas of need that they have. And the fact that they did this, again, less than 24 hours after the World Series is over, as soon as the game's over the next morning, 6 a.m. Eastern time, you can start making moves. And that's what the Angels did. So I'm encouraged by the fact that they got this done so quickly. And it's just the beginning of the offseason. And I have to believe that there's a world where they make some moves to improve the rotation with proven guys. Yes, you have Anderson and Soriano, Kohanowitz. Detmers has been there before. Silseth's been there before. Aldegari, promising. Clausen, promising. But I feel like the Angels are going to want to roll with some guys that have been there before, have done this before, have pitched at the major league level. We'll talk about what that might mean in the next segment. If I were building this rotation purely based on what the Angels have now, this is prior to moves, say they don't do anything the rest of the offseason and we're all furious, I would have Anderson, Soriano, Kohanowitz, Detmers, and Silseth as my starting 5. But we've got to hope. We've got to cross our fingers. We've got to hope and pray that the Angels actually do something. But again, I feel pretty good about the fact that they will do something, considering, again, they move so quickly after the World Series is over. They're the first ones making moves. They added somebody who adds a lot of firepower to the lineup. Again, 21% better than league average, mostly playing out of the DH spot. The Angels had no production out of the DH spot. And I only mentioned Willie Calhoun and his 97 OPS plus, but think about the other DHs that were there throughout the season as well. We covered them on that episode. Did the Angels use the DH well? And our conclusion was, no, they didn't. They really didn't. And so I think you're going to get a lot of production, whether it's Trout out of the DH spot, whether it's Soler out of the DH spot, or even giving it to guys every now and then to get them off their feet. I think we're going to see a lot of production out of that DH spot. But for now, Griffin Canning earned us 2 years of Jorge Soler at $13 million a year. Not a bad price tag for somebody with that kind of production. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Gametime. They are obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. With Gametime, you can get last-minute deals on tickets, save up to 60% off sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. You can save even more with their in-app flash deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event. You can save even more with zone deals when you choose a section, and then Gametime chooses the seats for you. They have all-in pricing, shows the total up front, no surprise fees at checkout, so you know how much it's going to cost and what you're going to get. You can also get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, so you know where you're going, you know what your view is going to look like, you know that you're not going to have a big pole in front of you or anything like that. That's something that you're going to want to take care of before you buy your tickets. They also have the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime is going to credit you 110% of the difference. Every ticket you buy is covered with their Gametime ticket coverage. It's covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app today. Use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Again, LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. What time is it? It's game time. Okay, so we're kind of left with some questions. I did my best to answer all the questions I had seen since the move was made yesterday, but I think now we kind of have more questions, don't we? Are the Angels really going to have Trout, Soler, Ward, Moniak, Adele? Are they really going to roll with 5 outfielders on the roster? This makes me nervous because it puts us in the same situation we started at last year. Remember, it was Ward, Trout, Adele, Moniak, and Aaron Hicks to start the season. We saw Moniak and Adele lose playing time to Aaron Hicks constantly. Hicks was in there nearly every game, should have been the backup to Adele and Moniak, but instead, he's the guy in there most of the time. I honestly believe, and I think Mike would agree with me, that the lack of consistent playing time, consistency for Mickey Moniak, it really hurt him. And he needs consistent playing time to get into a groove. And yeah, we started to see that toward the end of the season. But honestly, if they're going to make anything out of Mickey Moniak, if they're planning on using him, if they want him to get better, if they want to do something with him, he's got to play. And having 5 outfielders really makes me question, what are they going to do for the remainder of the offseason? We talked all this week about, different moves the Angels have made. MLB trade rumors brought up that Taylor Ward could be a potential trade candidate. This, to me, adding Jorge Soler seems to indicate that moving Taylor Ward is even more likely right now, especially if they use him to get some starting pitching. Remember, Perry Minasian said, we'll explore the free agent market. We'll explore the trade market. And Taylor Ward is a really intriguing piece for a lot of teams out there. Minasian did say they haven't planned on how much Soler is going to play in the outfield just yet, but they could see a scenario where they keep all 5 outfielders on the roster. Perry said, we'll see where it goes. It's definitely possible we keep all 5. It's definitely possible. Guys, I am a happily married man now, thank goodness. But I have heard the phrase definitely possible a lot of times in my former dating life. So I take Perry Minasian's word with a grain of salt that they keep all 5 outfielders. Look, the fact that they're going to explore the trade market for starting pitching, we talked about somebody like Eric Fetty the other day for Taylor Ward. That might not be the move, but I think there's a move out there for Taylor Ward to get the Angels some starting pitching, somebody who's pitched at the major league level. They got plenty of depth. They have plenty of guys they can go to. But I think at this point, they want major league guys who have been there before. And I think a 1-to-1 swap, maybe a 2-and-1 swap, so Ward and somebody else for some starting pitching gets that deal done. One last thing I want to refer to is comparing Jorge Soler to some of the names that we did discuss this week that came from the trade rumors article about trading Taylor Ward. They had 4 free agent names that the Halos could pursue in order to replace Taylor Ward. Remember, it was Anthony Santander, Teoscar Hernandez, Tyler O'Neill, and Michael Conforto. Obviously, I think that the Angels are out of the running when it comes to any of those guys in free agency. Remember, Santander and O'Neill have qualifying offers attached to them. And I think Perry Minasian and even Artie Moreno don't want to give up draft picks based on the way that they have spoken over the last few months. I even think, like I said, Artie Moreno wants to hang on to his draft picks. That's shocking to me. It's like pigs fly, right? But I wanted to compare Jorge Soler to those 4 options that trade rumors listed. And while Soler had a 121 OPS plus across the season, here's what I hang my hat on. Once he got to the Braves and finished out the season there, he had a 134 OPS plus with Atlanta, 34% better than league average. Why does that make me happy? Because Santander also has a 134 OPS plus. Teoscar Hernandez has a 137 OPS plus. Tyler O'Neill was 132. Michael Conforto, 116. I know that it was only half, quote unquote, half the season with Atlanta, but something about San Francisco. I don't know if it's the wind. I don't know if it's the chilly nights. I mean, they're right there on the water, so it does get cold. Something wasn't working with Jorge Soler in San Francisco. There was no Soler power in San Francisco. I feel pretty good about the fact that, yes, his whole season was 121 OPS plus. Maybe he didn't put up the home run numbers he has in the past. He did play half the season in San Francisco. Maybe he didn't put up the same numbers as Santander or Teoscar. Their lines are all very similar. Their average, OPS, on base, all that stuff. But maybe the full season of Santander at 121, I think it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And the fact that he did play outfield every single day that he played for the Braves, the fact that he had a 134 OPS plus with the Braves, found himself again with the Braves. Again, his, I'm going back here through my notes, 493 slugging percentage with the Braves, 849 OPS with the Braves. I feel pretty good about that, especially coming to Angel Stadium. I think that Soler is going to do a lot better there than he did in San Francisco. And the final thing I'll say is we were worried about the cost of a Santander, Hernandez, all that stuff. We didn't even think the Angels would play in that pool. We were worried that they would just go for Michael Conforto, right, who was well beyond his best years. But it does feel pretty good to get somebody like Jorge Soler, who is playing in the same sandbox as some of those guys, maybe not to the extent of a Santander or Hernandez. Those guys can certainly play the outfield better than Soler. But I will say, productivity-wise, his OPS is up there with those guys. And rather than spending the money on a free agent and going out and getting one of those guys, feels pretty good to know that we got Soler for 2 years at $13 million apiece, or each year, I should say, just for Griffin Canning. And if I don't have to watch Griffin Canning give up 5 runs in the first inning every start, it's going to be a much better season for all of us and for my mental health. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. For your second listen, head on over to the Locked On MLB podcast. Sully has spoken about the World Series. He's going to be talking about the offseason. He's got you covered. Foul pole to foul pole on Locked On MLB every single day. It's available on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Hey, give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On Angels and connect with both of us, Mike and I, on Twitter and Instagram at Super Halo Bros. I probably got him into some trouble. I was being snotty on Super Halo Bros. I apologize. I'm sorry I hurt Dodger fans' feelings. So if you're curious what I'm talking about, head on over to Super Halo Bros on Twitter and you'll find out. But also follow us on Instagram as well. We've got some great stuff going on over there. Monday on Locked On Angels, when we come back, we'll do Feedback Friday. That was the plan for today. And then the trade happened. I had the whole script ready. I had to rewrite everything. So I'm going to use the notes and the show notes and the script from what we were going to do today. And we're going to do that on Monday. So Feedback Friday, you guys sent in so many great comments about players and trades and free agents. And I would really like to address those with Mike. So he will be back with us on Monday. Until then, my name is John. My brother Mike will be back with us when we return over the weekend. We hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday. Something. Little comment, little joke at the end of the show.